Pakistan's armored plan in the Khem-Karan sector was bold because it aimed at more than recovering a border town. It sought to turn the widening war in Punjab into a sudden operational crisis for India. The idea was to seize Khem-Karan, break through with the weight of Pakistan's 1st Armored Division, and drive toward the Bias line, where roads, bridges, and river crossings could shape the fate of the wider front. This matters because Asal-Uttar was not simply a battle between Indian and Pakistani tanks. It was the collision between an ambitious theory of armored decision and the stubborn realities of terrain, timing, supply, and combined arms. If you would like to move beyond the podcast, you can see my available books at militaryauthor.me. And at trackpads.com, you will find magazines and galleries with hundreds of thousands of photos and videos to explore. By early September 1965, Pakistan faced a strategic problem, partly created by its own earlier moves. Operation Gibraltar had failed to produce the expected political upheaval in Kashmir, and Operation Grand Slam had not settled the situation around Aknor before India widened the war. When Indian forces crossed the international border in Punjab on the 6th of September, the conflict became larger, more dangerous, and more difficult to control. Lahore and the surrounding approaches suddenly mattered with urgent political and military force. Pakistan needed a counterstroke that could do more than restore a local line. It needed an action that might seize the initiative, disrupt Indian planning, and make India pay for expanding the war. The Khem-Karan sector offered a possible answer because of where it led. From the Pakistani side, near Kasur, the ground opened toward Khem-Karan, and beyond Khem-Karan toward Bikiwind, Harike, and the Bias-Sutlej water system. For a listener without a map, the essential image is a doorway on the border, leading into deeper Punjab. Khem-Karan itself was not the final prize, but it guarded approaches that could become far more important if an armored force broke through quickly. An advance toward Harike and the Bias crossings threatened to reach places where Indian communications and movement could be badly disrupted. That possibility gave the plan its attraction and its danger. The armored instrument chosen for this task was Pakistan's 1st Armored Division, a formation that carried the prestige and confidence of modern mechanized warfare. Its American-built Patton tanks gave it a reputation for strength, and in many respects, these machines were formidable by the standards of the region. They had firepower, mobility, radios, and a psychological presence that could matter greatly when facing troops who expected a heavy blow. But the division did not operate in a vacuum. Infantry, artillery, engineers, reconnaissance elements, fuel columns, ammunition trucks, repair teams, and command vehicles all had to move and work together. A tank division is not a mass of metal alone. It is a living system that can lose power if any part of that system falls behind. The concept behind the offensive followed a classic armored logic. A forward defense would be broken or pushed aside, Khem-Karan would be taken, and then the armored formation would exploit into the depth before India could organize a firm response. Speed was the center of the design. If Pakistani armor moved rapidly enough, Indian commanders might have to react to events rather than shape them. Reserves could be forced into hurried movement, communications could become uncertain, and the threat to crossings and rear routes could become larger than the battlefield itself. The plan depended on converting tactical penetration into operational shock, which has been the dream of armored commanders since tanks first promised movement beyond the trench line. Yet armored warfare is full of plans that depend on speed, until the battlefield begins taking speed away. The ground around Khem-Karan was flatter than Kashmir, but it was not a parade ground. Fields, irrigation channels, village edges, tree lines, and wet or soft patches could restrict movement. September conditions made water and soil especially important. Heavy tanks that left firm routes might find themselves slowed, exposed, or channeled into predictable approaches. Even when ground appears open from a distance, the practical routes available to a formation can be narrow. Once a division is funneled, the defender does not need to stop every tank everywhere. It needs to make the attacker bunch, pause, and reveal where the next blow is coming. The timing of the operation also carried risk. Pakistan was trying to respond to a war that had widened suddenly and violently. Units had to be positioned, orders clarified, supplies brought forward, and infantry and armor coordinated under the pressure of Indian action elsewhere on the front. A plan that looks clean at headquarters can become untidy when roads are crowded, reports conflict, and commanders are unsure whether the enemy is withdrawing, collapsing, or preparing something worse. The Khem-Karan thrust required not only courage and confidence, but a precise reading of Indian intentions. If India fought stubbornly in the wrong place, the attack might slow. If India withdrew deliberately to a better place, the attackers might mistake opportunity for success. Reconnaissance was therefore crucial. A fast armored thrust must know what is ahead, what ground is passable, where the defender has gone, and where obstacles may be forming. Tanks moving without good reconnaissance can still be powerful, but they become powerful in a dangerous kind of blindness. The enemy may be hidden in crops, behind village walls, along canal banks, or in positions chosen to catch vehicles from the flank. Artillery fire can mask movement or punish concentration. Mines can turn a route into a trap. Engineers can change the value of the ground overnight. In this kind of battle, information is a weapon, and the side that misunderstands the ground may discover the truth only when vehicles begin to burn. Logistics were just as important as reconnaissance, though they are less dramatic in memory. A Patton tank needed fuel, ammunition, maintenance support, and routes strong enough to keep the whole armored machine moving. Disabled tanks had to be recovered or abandoned, and broken vehicles could block roads at exactly the wrong moment. Fuel trucks and ammunition carriers could not simply materialize at the front when needed. They had to survive movement through a widening war zone under the threat of artillery and air attack. If the spearhead moved faster than its support, it risked becoming isolated. If the support clogged the roads, the spearhead lost tempo. Armored warfare often turns on this unglamorous balance between reach and endurance. Command and control formed another fragile part of the plan. Pakistani tanks had radios, and radio communication was a major advantage in modern armored battle. But radios alone did not guarantee coordination. Infantry had to know when to move with the tanks and when to clear resistance. Artillery had to support the advance without falling behind the changing situation. Engineers had to open routes, handle obstacles, and help with crossings. Commanders had to decide whether to push forward, pause, bypass, regroup, or redirect. Each decision affected time. A force that pauses too long gives the defender room to recover, but a force that pushes too hard without support may drive itself into a killing zone. The Indian defense that Pakistan expected was not necessarily the defense it would meet. Indian formations in the sector had suffered strain and uncertainty, and Khem-Karan itself was vulnerable. But vulnerability is not the same thing as collapse. A defender can give up exposed ground to gain time, depth, and better fields of fire. That is what made the coming battle so dangerous for Pakistan's plan. If Indian troops pulled back in disorder, Pakistani armor might exploit the break. If they pulled back with purpose, the same movement could become the beginning of a trap. Mines, flooding, concealed anti-tank weapons, artillery, and armor placed in depth could turn the road beyond Khem-Karan into a place where speed was punished instead of rewarded. The stakes should be taken seriously, without turning the plan into myth. Had Pakistani armor broken through cleanly toward Harike and the Bias crossings, India would have faced a grave operational crisis in Punjab. Such a breakthrough would not automatically have ended the war, because reserves, demolitions, air power, and supply limits still matter. But it could have forced major redeployments, threatened communications, and reshaped the political pressure on Indian leaders. That is why the plan was not reckless in conception, merely because it failed. It aimed at a real vulnerability and tried to use armored strength for a war-shaping purpose. Its danger lay in the number of conditions that had to remain favorable once the operation began. Pakistan's armored plan at Counterblow was therefore both impressive and fragile. It rested on a belief that mass, speed, and modern tanks could tear open the Punjab front before India could build a coherent defense. It also rested on assumptions about terrain, timing, reconnaissance, logistics, and Indian reaction that proved far more difficult than the plan required. In the long history of armored warfare, this is a familiar pattern. From Cambrai onward, tanks have promised breakthrough, but breakthrough becomes decision only when the entire combined arms system works and the enemy cannot turn movement against the mover. At Asal Uttar, Pakistan would discover that a road to the Bias existed on the map, but not every road on a map remains open on the battlefield.
You've been listening to Famous Tank Battles. These battles were never just about machines. They were about doctrine, terrain, firepower, logistics, and the hard problem of turning shock into victory. For more military history writing and books, visit militaryauthor.me. And for magazines, podcasts, and a massive archive of military photos and video, visit trackpads.com. Thanks for listening.